There is a room somewhere in your past. Maybe a parent's study, maybe a back office at a job you once had, maybe simply a door that was always closed, and you are certain, with a conviction that bypasses reason entirely, that something important was happening inside it. You don't know what. You were never told. That's precisely the point. The room you were asked to leave is always the more interesting room. Not because of what it contains. You almost certainly know, at some level, that it contains nothing remarkable. A filing cabinet. Conversation about money. Maybe nothing at all. But the mind doesn't care about the contents. The mind cares about the door. And here is the thing that should unsettle you slightly. This feeling is not personal. It is not cultural. It is not a quirk of your particular upbringing or your specific neurology. It is older than language, older than architecture, older in some sense than the concept of a room at all. Every human being who has ever lived has felt the pull of the closed door, which raises a question worth sitting with for a moment. What exactly are we reaching for? The easy answer is the forbidden fruit effect. We want what we cannot have. Scarcity drives desire. This is true. It is also completely unsatisfying as an explanation, because it just moves the question one step back. Why does scarcity drive desire? Why should the brain, which evolved to solve problems of survival, food, warmth, threat detection, care so intensely about access to information it didn't even know it wanted 5 minutes ago? The psychologists call it reactance. When you perceive that a freedom is being taken from you, you want that freedom more intensely than you did before it was threatened. Jack Graham identified this in 1966, and it holds across every culture researchers have bothered to test. Tell a child in Tokyo they cannot have something. Tell a child in São Paulo Disutu kanan anana katina. Ilona brida capital insi. Tell an adult in Oslo. The mechanism is identical. The feeling of restriction generates a specific cognitive pressure, almost a physical one, toward the restricted thing. But here's where it gets strange. The room you were invited into doesn't just become less interesting by comparison. It becomes actively, specifically boring. You are standing inside the permitted space, and your mind has already evacuated. It is pressed against the wall you cannot see past. The invitation, in some paradoxical way, is the thing that killed the curiosity. And that should make you wonder what curiosity actually is. There is a theory in information science called the information gap hypothesis, developed by George Lowenstein in the early 1990s. And it proposes something elegant and slightly depressing about the nature of curiosity. Curiosity, Lowenstein argued, is not a drive toward knowledge. It is a response to the awareness of a gap. You do not become curious about things you know nothing about. You feel nothing about them, because you don't know the gap exists. And you do not become curious about things you fully understand. There is no gap to feel. Curiosity lives precisely at the threshold, in the space between knowing there is something and not knowing what it is. The closed door is a physical instantiation of an information gap. It is the universe drawing a boundary and saying, here is where your knowledge ends. And the human nervous system, for reasons that stretch back through millions of years of evolution, cannot be comfortable with that. We are boundary-seeking animals. We have always been. The first humans to survive were not the ones who stayed in safe clearings. They were the ones who looked over the next ridge, who followed the river further than it was comfortable to follow, who asked what was on the other side of the thing that was in the way. The closed door is just the latest version of the ridge. The next room is just the latest version of the horizon. And we are still, all of us, constitutionally incapable of leaving the horizon alone. Now, here is the part that nobody tells you, and it makes all of this considerably weirder. Researchers at the University of Notre Dame conducted a series of experiments in the late 2000s that revealed something peculiar about the way human memory interacts with physical space. When you walk through a doorway, your brain treats it as an event boundary. It literally files away the context from the previous room, the thoughts you were having, the intention you were carrying, and begins a fresh episode. This is why you walk into a kitchen and forget why you came. The doorway is not just a gap in the wall. It is a gap in time, as far as your brain is concerned. Each room is its own mental episode. Each threshold is a small discontinuity in the story your mind is telling itself about the present moment. Think about what that means for the room you were just removed from. You did not complete the episode. The scene was interrupted before it resolved. Your brain has a fragment, a half-finished file, and it does not know how to close it. The Zeigarnik effect. Into the tendinen psychanalysen, our Zeigarnik. Namen for the Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who noticed in the 1920s that waiters remembered unfinished orders far better than completed ones, tells us that the incomplete haunts us. The unfinished task generates a persistent low-level hum of cognitive attention. You remember the meal you didn't finish. You think about the conversation that was cut short. And then you are drawn back, again and again, to the room you were asked to leave, not because it is interesting, but because it is unresolved. The brain does not like open files, and a closed door is the universe's most effective way of creating one. There is a larger pattern here, if you are willing to follow it all the way out to where it leads. The universe, as best as we can tell, is almost entirely inaccessible to us. There are regions of space separated from us by distances so vast that even light, which has been traveling since shortly after the beginning of everything, has not had time to reach us. There is a cosmic horizon beyond which we cannot see, not because our instruments are insufficient, but because causality itself draws the line there. The observable universe is a room. We are inside it. We did not choose to be invited in. And somewhere beyond the boundary of everything we can measure, everything we can calculate, everything we can even coherently imagine, there is presumably more. There is another room. We will never see it. We will never cross that threshold. And if you feel a faint, irrational pull in the direction of that thought, if the idea of the unknowable edge creates something that functions like longing, then you understand in the most literal possible sense that curiosity is not a feature of human psychology. It is a feature of the universe encountering itself. We did not develop curiosity by accident. We developed it because the universe is structured in layers, in thresholds, in nested inaccessibilities, and something in the arrangement of matter that is us responds to that structure, like a key responding to the shape of a lock. The closed door is not a frustration. It is a recognition. Something in us knows that the boundary is where everything interesting lies. And something in us has always known this, long before there were doors. So, you are standing in a corridor. The door behind you has just been closed. The room ahead of you is open, lit, and waiting. And you already know which one you are thinking about. This is not weakness. This is not irrationality. This is 4 billion years of evolutionary pressure, laid over a universe that is itself constructed from thresholds and horizons and information gaps, stacked all the way down. The room you were invited into is real. It is present. It is yours. And yet, the other door is still there. And you can feel the shape of the question on the other side of it. Not the answer, just the question, pressing outward against the wood like something alive. Here is the thing that the science cannot quite tell you, and I am not sure anything can, whether the curiosity is pointing at the room, or whether the room is just the nearest available object for a curiosity that was always pointed at something else entirely, something further out, something that has been receding from us at the speed of light since before we had eyes to notice. We have always been creatures of the almost open door. Maybe that is enough. Maybe that is everything.